The morning mist clung to the forest floor like a second skin, curling around gnarled oaks and dripping from the branches. Far below, the village of Ravensford stirred to life, smoke rising from chimney tops, the distant bleating of sheep, carts rattling over uneven roads. Yet Aldric rode through this quiet woodland alone, hearing none of it. The forest had a weight to it in the early hour, dense and alive, and the narrow trail underfoot was slick with dew. Aldric was a man of middling years, tall and lean, his frame hardened by years on horseback. His dark hair streaked with silver caught the morning light as he rode, his hands steady on the reins. A scar ran along his left cheek, a souvenir from a skirmish years past. His armor was practical, not ornate enough to protect without hindering speed, and his sword hung ready at his side. More than his gear, it was his calm, measured presence that earned trust from villagers and caution from those who might threaten them. He had ridden from the northern hills toward Ravensford Manor with a task of little consequence, collecting letters from the Lord Steward and checking on the peasants in the outlying farms. Yet the forest pressed an unusually thick that morning, and the cries of the birds were restless, as though aware of some hidden disturbance. The manor of Lord Wulfric loomed on a hill above the village, its dark stone walls grim against the pale sky. Wulfric himself was feared far beyond Ravensford, rich, clever, and cruel. Rumors of his cruelty whispered through the villagers' cottages, servants beaten for imagined slights, taxes levied without mercy, tenants punished for speaking too freely. Aldric had served him faithfully, but his loyalty was tempered by knowledge of Wulfric's temper. A faint sound, almost swallowed by the wind, caught Aldric's attention, a soft broken cry, human in its despair. He urged his horse to a halt and listened. There it was again, a desperate, pleading sound, faint but distinct. He drew closer, moving cautiously, branches scraping against his cloak. Through the bracken, he saw her, Lady Evelyn, crouched and shivering, mud streaking her once fine gown. Her hair was disheveled, her hands scratched from brambles. Eyes wide with fear, she looked as though the forest itself might consume her. "My lord, he accused me of betrayal," she cried, coming toward him. "He left me here in the forest. I do not know why. I do not know what I have done." He remembered seeing the hunting party leave yesterday. Lady Evelyn and several of Wulfric's men had set out with bows and hounds, laughter echoing through the trees. That she had not returned with them and was now here trembling and alone made his blood run cold. "You are safe now," Aldric said, kneeling beside her and offering a steady hand. "We will move carefully. You must come with me." He eased an arm beneath her shoulders, supporting her gently. "Can you stand, my lady?" She nodded faintly. Aldric guided her through the brush to his horse. The creature snorted softly, sensing her weakness yet standing still as he lifted her into the saddle. "Hold fast to the pommel," he said. "I shall lead you." Taking the reins, Aldric walked ahead, guiding the horse along a narrow woodland path. Evelyn steadied herself, though her breath was shallow and her hands trembled. The trees loomed thick and dark, and the undergrowth tore at Aldric's cloak as he pushed onward. Roots twisted across the earth, so he chose each step with care lest the horse stumble under her. They crossed a swollen brook, water rushing around Aldric's boots. On the far bank he paused briefly, letting her gather what little strength she had left. "We must press on," he said quietly. "Wulfric's men will notice my absence soon enough." The forest seemed to hold its breath. Twice Aldric guided the horse into hiding, once behind a fallen oak, as two of Wulfric's foresters passed, and again beneath a thicket while armed riders clattered down the main track. Evelyn clung to the saddle, fear widening her eyes as Aldric kept one hand on her knee, steadying her. Near late afternoon, Aldric turned toward a narrow side trail he knew well. Soon he could see a thin column of smoke rising above the trees, and then a small cottage. Aldric slowed his steps as the trees thinned, and the little dwelling came into view. The sight of it stirred an old memory. He had known Mother Ansel since boyhood, long before he ever bore a sword. She had been midwife and herbwife to half the countryside, tending babes and broken bones with hands knotted like old roots yet steady as winter stone. He remembered her bent figure moving through harvest fields, gathering thyme and feverfew. Remembered her sharp tongue and sharper eyes as she scolded lads who trampled her herb patches. She had given him broth once when he lay fevered as a youth, and in later years he had brought her firewood in winter when snows cut off the lanes. A strange comfort pressed against his chest at the thought of her. If there was any soul in these parts who still kept kindness alive, it was the old woman who dwelt here. The cottage was small and homely, tucked near a cluster of trees that sheltered it from the wind. Its wattle and daub walls were weather-stained but sturdy. Smoke drifted from the crooked chimney, carrying the smell of wood smoke and something warm cooking inside. Lady Eveline stirred faintly in the saddle. Her voice was soft, strained. "Who dwells here? A kindly soul," Aldric answered. "Mother Ansel. She has nursed half the folk of these woods in her day. If any can see to you, Lady Eveline, it is she." Eveline gave a slow nod, too weary for more. "Rest easy a moment," he murmured. "I will call her out." He struck his knuckles against the wood firm, respectful. The sound echoed in the quiet clearing. Footsteps shuffled within. Then the door opened a crack and Mother Ansel peered out. Wrapped in her old wool shawl, her eyes sharp despite the dim light. "Aldric of Weatherford," she said. "What brings you at such an hour?" Aldric stepped aside so she might see who he brought. "I need help," he said simply. Aldric lifted Lady Eveline down with care, her fingers clutching at his sleeve, and guided her into the warm glow of the cottage. The fire crackled softly, and for the first time since finding her, he felt a slow relief settle over him. Mother Ansel bustled forward, her hands already at work. She guided Lady Eveline to a low cot near the hearth, and helped her settle upon the straw mattress. "Lie still, child," she said gently. "You have suffered much, and your body needs rest." Eveline leaned back, trembling. I do not know why he left me so," she murmured. Aldric crouched beside her, resting a hand lightly on the cot. "Lord Wulfric is cruel, my lady," he said. "Yet you are alive, and Mother Ansel will see to you." The old woman pressed a warm cloth to Eveline's brow, then handed her a small bowl of broth. "Drink slowly," she said. "It will give you strength." Eveline obeyed, sipping carefully, and Aldric watched as color slowly returned to her cheeks. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, but within the cottage all was quiet and safe. Once she was asleep, Mother Ansel looked at Aldric. "She cannot remain here long. Wulfric's men may search the woods. I have no way to keep her hidden for more than a night." Aldric nodded. "There's a place where he cannot reach her. Her brother's hall lies beyond the river, with strong walls and loyal men. There she will be safe." Mother Ansel straightened, brushing her hands on her apron. "You have only one horse, and the river runs dangerously high. It would be folly to risk it with Lady Eveline still weak." Aldric frowned, running a hand over his jaw. "Then what would you have us do?" Mother Ansel tapped her chin, eyes sharp and steady. "Fetch my boy Thomas. He shall run this night to Hugh the bowman. I know him well, he will lend a horse." Aldric's gaze drifted toward the sleeping figure of Lady Eveline, her shoulders rising and falling with slow, even breaths. The candlelight flickered across her pale face. He weighed the danger, the hours of darkness, the unknown that awaited them. After a long pause, he gave a slow nod. "The lad will return with the horse before the first light?" he asked. Mother Ansel answered softly, "Yes. By then she will have rested enough to ride again." The first light of dawn was pale and misted, curling along the forest floor and clinging to the gnarled roots of ancient oaks. Dew weighed heavy on the leaves and trickled from the branches in tiny rivulets. In the small clearing before Mother Ansel's cottage, the world was still, save for the soft clatter of hooves as Thomas approached, riding hard but careful. The two horses stood side by side in the clearing. Lady Eveline sat astride one, a blanket drawn about her shoulders, her dark eyes watching the mist-shrouded forest ahead. She said nothing, only shifted slightly in the saddle, alert but quiet. Aldric took the reins of the second horse, leading it carefully alongside her. He mounted first, guiding Eveline's movements with steady hands. Her fingers rested lightly on the saddle, her head tilting toward him only slightly, trust unspoken but certain. They began down the narrow forest trail, step by cautious step. Mist clung to the hollows and tangled roots, curling around the trunks of gnarled oaks. The air smelled of wet earth and pine, and the horses' hooves whispered against the damp path. They came at last to the swollen river, its water gray and swift, ice clinging to the edges. Aldric guided the horses carefully to the bank. Step by careful step, they pressed through the water until the far bank rose beneath them. Drenched and trembling, the horses shook themselves free. Without pause, Aldric led them along the forest trail, the path winding upward and onward toward safety. He spoke little. There was no need. Lady Eveline remained quiet, her breathing even, her gaze fixed ahead. Each step brought them farther from danger, closer to the hills where her brother's hall lay beyond the forest. They rode for some miles, the path winding through low ridges and shallow valleys, until the trees gave way almost entirely to open fields. Here, the land fell gently, and in the distance, Aldric's sharp eyes caught the faint shapes of walls and towers, rising above the patchwork of hedgerows and farmland. Eveline's gaze lifted, and for the first time since the terror of the night, her lips parted slightly, almost in a sigh. The hall came into full view, a stout stone structure, its walls thick and weathered, with a square keep at the center. Smoke rose from the chimneys in lazy spirals, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke across the fields. Beyond the walls, a cluster of outbuildings and stables lay nestled in a courtyard, and the distant figures of servants and men-at-arms moved among them, starting the day's work. Aldric slowed the horses, keeping them hidden behind a low rise of earth and a scattering of hawthorn. He scanned the approach, noting the guards and the open gates. The hall was well defended, yet quiet for the hour. A faint wind carried the soft murmur of laboring voices and the clink of harness and tool, comforting in its ordinary rhythm. Eveline shifted slightly in her saddle, her eyes bright but wary. She said nothing, only let the horses follow Aldric's lead, trusting his judgment as he guided them toward the hall. Each step brought them closer, the danger of the forest and the river behind them, now replaced by the measured caution required to enter the safety of her brother's walls. The path curved gently, hedgerows marking the boundaries of the hall's lands. Aldric felt the tension ease slightly in his shoulders, though his eyes remained watchful. The horses entered the stone-paved courtyard. Guards at the gate noticed their approach, hands hovering near sword hilts. They exchanged wary glances, murmuring to each other. From the doors of the hall, a tall figure appeared, moving briskly across the courtyard. His strides were long and purposeful, the weight of command in every step. He drew closer, eyes scanning the riders, the horses, and the small figure of the lady who clung lightly to the saddle. As he neared, recognition struck him suddenly. "Eveline?" His voice broke slightly, edged with disbelief and relief. She slid lightly from her horse, pale but upright, and Lord Cedric reached her side in 2 quick strides, drawing her into a firm embrace. The sun climbed higher, spilling light across the stone walls and fields beyond. Lord Cedric guided Eveline inside, closing the gates behind them. Aldric lingered for a moment at the threshold, scanning the path they had traveled to ensure no danger remained. She was safe within the walls of her brother's hall. Aldric allowed a faint shadow of a smile to cross his scarred cheek. That she had survived, unharmed, was all that mattered. Outside, the wind whispered through the hedgerows, carrying the quiet promise of another day, while inside, warmth, shelter, and the enduring comfort of home awaited her.